It was a rainy evening when I first stumbled upon the listing that would change my life forever. As I scrolled through the dimly lit pages of a forum dedicated to the dark web, my heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The screen flickered, casting an eerie glow over my cluttered desk, where half-empty coffee cups and crumpled notes lay scattered like remnants of my chaotic thoughts. I had always been drawn to the macabre, fascinated by stories of cursed objects and haunted relics. Little did I know that my curiosity would lead me down a path from which there would be no return. The artifact was described as an ancient talisman, said to have belonged to a notorious cult leader from the early 1800s. The seller claimed it possessed otherworldly powers, capable of granting wishes but at a price. As I read through the comments, tales of misfortune and bizarre occurrences surrounded those who had dared to possess it. Yet, rather than deter me, these stories only fueled my desire. What was life without a little risk? I felt an insatiable urge to own something so steeped in history, something that could connect me to a world long forgotten. I clicked on the listing, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed out my payment information. The transaction was swift and anonymous, typical for dark web dealings. A rush of adrenaline surged through me as I confirmed my order. It felt like I had crossed an invisible line into a realm where rules no longer applied, a world where shadows whispered secrets and danger lurked just beyond the veil of normalcy. Days passed, each one filled with anticipation as I awaited the arrival of my mysterious package. I imagined how it would look, how it would feel in my hands, the weight of history pressing against my palm. Finally, on a particularly stormy night, there was a knock at my door. My heart raced as I opened it to find a plain brown box sitting on my doorstep, drenched from the rain, yet somehow untouched by the elements. With trembling hands, I brought it inside and placed it on my dining table. The room was dimly lit by a single overhead bulb that flickered ominously, as if sensing the significance of what lay before me. I carefully peeled away the layers of tape and cardboard until I revealed a small wooden box intricately carved with symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. It felt alive. As I lifted the lid, a musty odor wafted out, an earthy scent reminiscent of damp soil and decay. Nestled within was the talisman itself, a small pendant shaped like an eye surrounded by twisted vines. Its surface shimmered faintly in the low light, drawing me in with an irresistible allure. It was beautiful yet unsettling, as if it held secrets too dark for mere mortals to comprehend. Ignoring a shiver that ran down my spine, I reached for it. The moment my fingers brushed against its surface, a jolt surged through me, an electric connection that sent ripples across my skin. It felt as if something ancient had awakened within me, stirring memories that were not mine but belonged to those who had come before. I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was more than just an artifact. It was a gateway to something far more sinister. Yet curiosity gnawed at me relentlessly. What could it do? What power did it hold? As night fell and shadows danced across my walls, I decided to wear it around my neck, a decision that would soon haunt me. In those initial hours after donning the talisman, nothing seemed amiss. I went about my evening routine, cooking dinner while listening to music, but an unsettling sensation lingered in the back of my mind. It felt as though someone or something was watching me from just beyond the edges of light. Later that night, as I settled into bed with thoughts swirling in my head about what I had just acquired, sleep eluded me. The darkness felt thicker than usual. Every creak of the house echoed like thunder in my ears. Just when I thought fatigue might finally claim me, a soft rustling sound broke through the silence, a whispering breeze that seemed to carry voices from another realm. I sat up abruptly, heart pounding in my chest as I strained to listen. The sound grew louder, morphing into indistinct murmurs that sent chills racing down my spine. Was it just my imagination, or had the talisman already begun its work? Suddenly there was a loud bang from downstairs, a sound so jarring that it propelled me out of bed and into action. Adrenaline coursed through me as I grabbed my phone for light and made my way cautiously down the hallway toward the source of the noise. The house felt alive with energy. Shadows flickered along the walls, as if they were dancing in anticipation of something dreadful about to unfold. Each step echoed ominously in the stillness until I reached the bottom of the stairs and peered into the living room. What awaited me there would change everything. This segment sets up your story by introducing key elements: your protagonist's fascination with dark artifacts, their impulsive decision to purchase one from the dark web, and hints at impending horror through atmospheric tension and foreshadowing events tied to their new possession. You can continue building on this foundation for subsequent segments. As I stepped into the living room, the air felt charged, heavy with an unnameable tension. The light from my phone illuminated the space, revealing nothing out of the ordinary furniture in its usual place, shadows lurking in corners. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. My heart raced as I scanned the room for any sign of disturbance. Then I saw the talisman, resting on the coffee table where I had left it. But it wasn't alone. A small, dark figure flickered at the edge of my vision, darting just beyond the reach of my phone's light. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there, only the oppressive silence of my home. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself, trying to dismiss my rising anxiety. Perhaps it was just a trick of the light or my overactive imagination. After all, I had just brought home an object steeped in dark history. It was only natural to feel a bit unnerved. I took a deep breath and returned to bed, determined to shake off this creeping dread. That night, sleep came fitfully. Every creak of the house seemed amplified, each sound a reminder that I was not alone. The talisman hung around my neck like a weight, its presence both comforting and foreboding. As I closed my eyes, I could have sworn I felt a cold breath against my ear, whispering words I couldn't quite understand. When morning finally arrived, I awoke with a sense of urgency. The sun streamed through my window, casting warm light across the room and momentarily dispelling the shadows of the night before. I got up and made coffee, hoping that caffeine would clear my mind and help me focus on my day ahead. But as I moved about my routine, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in my home. Objects seemed slightly out of place. A chair was pulled away from the table, and a picture frame hung askew on the wall. Had I been so distracted last night that I hadn't noticed? Or was something else at play? I decided to take a break from my usual activities and delve deeper into researching the talisman's origins. Sitting at my desk with my laptop open, I began scouring various forums and websites for any mention of its history. The more I read, the more uneasy I became. The cult leader who had owned it was said to have practiced dark rituals aimed at summoning spirits and bending them to his will. His followers believed he could communicate with otherworldly entities and even control them. Accounts from those who had come into contact with similar artifacts spoke of strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, whispers in empty rooms, shadows that seemed to have minds of their own. As hours passed in this unsettling research session, I began to feel as though eyes were upon me once more. It was as if something unseen was lurking just beyond my field of vision, waiting for me to acknowledge its presence. My heart raced again as paranoia seeped into my thoughts. That evening, determined not to let fear dictate my life, I decided to host a small gathering with friends. They were unaware of what had transpired since I'd received the talisman. All they knew was that I wanted to share an evening filled with laughter and distraction. As they arrived, 3 close friends who shared my taste for horror stories and supernatural tales, we settled into familiar banter over drinks and snacks. The atmosphere lightened considerably as we reminisced about our college days and swapped ghost stories. But beneath their laughter lay an undercurrent of tension that mirrored my own unease. "Have you guys ever heard about cursed objects?" I asked casually during one lull in conversation. "Cursed objects," Sarah replied with a smirk. "Like what? A haunted doll or something?" "Actually," I said hesitantly, "I recently ordered something online, a talisman from this obscure site." Their laughter faded slightly as they leaned in closer. "What kind of talisman?" Mark asked with genuine curiosity. I hesitated, but decided to share what little information I had gathered about its history and previous owners. As soon as I mentioned the cult leader and his dark rituals, an uncomfortable silence fell over us. "Dude," Jake said nervously after a moment's pause, "you shouldn't mess with stuff like that." "Yeah," Sarah added with a nervous laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What if it really is cursed?" I waved off their concerns, but felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Perhaps they were right, perhaps there were things better left undiscovered. As we continued our evening together playing games and sharing ghost stories, I noticed strange occurrences around us, lights flickering intermittently overhead and shadows dancing just out of sight. Each time someone laughed or told a joke, it felt as though an unseen presence joined us, a silent observer lurking in our midst. By midnight, our laughter had faded into uneasy silence as we sat around the table playing cards. The atmosphere grew thicker with tension. Even Mark seemed distracted now, glancing nervously toward the darkened corners of the room. "Hey," he said suddenly, breaking our silence. "Is it just me, or does it feel colder in here?" I frowned, but couldn't deny it. A chill had settled over us, despite being indoors on a warm night. Just then, Sarah gasped softly as she pointed toward the window. "Did you see that?" she whispered urgently. We all turned to look outside, where shadows danced against the glass, a flicker of movement that vanished before we could fully comprehend what we'd seen. "I think we should call it a night," Jake suggested uneasily, glancing at his watch as if time had suddenly become important. Reluctantly agreeing with him, we began packing up our things while trying to shake off an unsettling feeling that clung to us like fog on a cold morning. As they left one by one, a chorus of nervous laughter trailing behind them, I couldn't help but feel that something had shifted within me since acquiring the talisman. After they departed, silence enveloped me once more. However, this time it felt heavier than before, as if every shadow held secrets too dark for daylight to unveil. I glanced at the talisman hanging from my neck. Its surface glimmered faintly under dim light, as if beckoning me closer. Yet again, a siren call promising power but shrouded in danger. That night marked a turning point. Sleep eluded me once more as visions danced behind closed eyelids, images of dark figures swirling around me in an endless void, while whispers echoed through my mind like taunts from another world. When dawn finally broke through heavy clouds outside my window, a weak light struggling against lingering darkness, I knew things could never return to normal again. This segment builds tension by introducing unsettling events during and after your protagonist's gathering with friends, while deepening their connection to the artifact and foreshadowing darker developments ahead. You can continue expanding on these themes for subsequent segments. The following days were a blur of anxiety and dread. Each morning I awoke with a sense of foreboding that settled heavily in my chest. The talisman hung around my neck like an anchor, a constant reminder of the darkness I had invited into my life. I could feel its weight, both physically and emotionally, as if it were a living entity feeding off my fear. Determined to uncover the truth about the artifact, I dove deeper into my research. I spent hours scouring online archives, old newspapers, and obscure forums dedicated to the paranormal. The more I learned about its origins, the more unsettled I became. The cult leader who had owned the talisman was named Elias Blackwood. He was notorious for his sinister rituals and was rumored to have made a pact with dark forces. According to various accounts, Blackwood could summon spirits and bend them to his will, using their power to manipulate reality itself. His followers believed he could grant wishes, but at a terrible cost. Many who sought his favor ended up cursed, their lives spiraling into chaos. I found an old newspaper clipping that detailed a fire that had consumed Blackwood's estate in 1823. The article described how several cult members had perished in the blaze, their bodies never recovered. Locals whispered that Blackwood had summoned something beyond his control, a malevolent spirit that had turned on him and his followers. The fire was said to be a punishment for their transgressions against the natural order. As I read these accounts, I felt a chill run down my spine. The more I learned about Blackwood and his dark legacy, the more I realized how naive I had been to think I could control this artifact. It was not just an object, it was a conduit for something far more sinister. That night, as I sat at my desk surrounded by scattered papers and glowing screens, I decided to conduct an experiment. What if I could communicate with whatever presence was attached to the talisman? Perhaps understanding it would help me regain control over my life. I set up a makeshift seance in my living room, lighting candles and placing them in a circle around me. The flickering flames cast long shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere thick with tension. With trembling hands, I placed the talisman in the center of the circle and closed my eyes. "Is anyone here?" I whispered into the stillness. "If there is a spirit present, please make yourself known." For several minutes, nothing happened. The only sound was the soft crackling of candle flames and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Just as I began to doubt my decision, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing one of the candles and plunging me into darkness. I gasped and opened my eyes wide. My heart raced as shadows danced along the walls, twisting and contorting like figures in agony. A cold chill enveloped me, as if invisible hands were reaching out from beyond. "Who are you?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. In response, a low whisper filled the air, indistinct at first, but gradually forming coherent words. "Release us. Free us." My blood ran cold as realization struck me. These were not mere echoes of the past, but trapped souls seeking liberation from their torment. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to extinguish the remaining candles, plunging myself back into darkness. I stumbled back against the wall, breathing heavily as dread washed over me like a tidal wave. What had I done? What had I awakened? The next few days were marked by an unshakable sense of paranoia. Every creak of wood or rustle of fabric sent me spiraling into anxiety. It felt as though unseen eyes were watching me from every corner of my home, waiting for me to make another mistake. I tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy by going out with friends or immersing myself in work. However, nothing could distract me from the growing sense of dread that clung to me like a shadow. One evening, while scrolling through online forums again, seeking solace in shared experiences from others who had encountered similar artifacts, I came across a post that caught my attention. Beware of cursed objects, signs you're being haunted. My heart raced as I read through the list. 1. Unexplained noises, scratching sounds, or whispers when no one is around. 2. Cold spots, areas in your home that feel inexplicably cold. 3. Objects, moving items appearing in different places without explanation. 4. Nightmares, vivid dreams featuring dark figures or unsettling scenarios. 5. Feeling watched, a constant sensation that someone is observing you. Each point resonated deeply within me. It was as if every sign pointed directly at my situation. The whispers had grown louder since that fateful night during my seance. Shadows flitted just beyond my line of sight. Cold spots seemed to linger wherever I went. Desperate for answers and perhaps even redemption, I decided it was time to confront this haunting head-on. Armed with newfound knowledge and determination, I began researching ways to cleanse spaces of negative energies and banish spirits. I learned about various rituals involving salt circles, sage smudging, and protective crystals, methods used by those who sought to reclaim their homes from malevolent forces. Each piece of information filled me with hope. Perhaps there was still a chance to rid myself of this curse before it consumed me entirely. That Saturday night, after gathering supplies, sea salt, sage bundles, and protective crystals, I prepared for what felt like an inevitable confrontation with whatever lingered within my walls. As twilight descended outside and shadows deepened within my home, I lit sage and began walking through each room while chanting protective incantations I'd found online. The smoke curled around me like ethereal tendrils as I called upon positive energies to fill every corner, pushing out negativity while inviting light back into my life. But just as confidence surged within me, just as hope flickered like candlelight, a deafening crash echoed from upstairs, a sound so jarring it sent adrenaline coursing through my veins once more. Heart racing wildly in response to this new threat, I dashed up the stairs toward where I'd heard it come from, my mind racing with thoughts of what awaited me at its source. As I reached the top landing, breathless and trembling, I saw that all doors leading into bedrooms stood ajar, swung wide open as though inviting me inside, but only darkness awaited beyond each threshold, a void that seemed alive with anticipation. Then came another sound, a soft whisper carried on an unseen breeze, a voice so close yet so far away you cannot escape. This segment delves deeper into your protagonist's investigation into the artifact's history, while escalating tension through experiences with haunting phenomena and setting up for confrontations ahead. You can continue building on this narrative for subsequent segments. The air was thick with tension as I stood at the top of the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The whisper that had echoed through the house hung in the air like a dark promise, chilling me to the bone. I took a tentative step forward, my breath shallow and quick, feeling an unseen force pulling me toward the first bedroom door. With a trembling hand, I pushed it open. The room was cloaked in darkness, shadows clinging to every corner like malevolent spirits. My phone's light flickered as I stepped inside, illuminating a scene that sent a wave of nausea crashing over me. The bed was unmade, sheets twisted and thrown aside as if someone had been violently tossed from it. A cold draft swept through the room, wrapping around me like icy fingers. "Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice wavering as I strained to hear any response. Silence enveloped me, thick and oppressive. I turned to leave but stopped short when I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye, a fleeting shadow darting across the wall. My pulse quickened as I spun around, shining my phone's light into the darkness. "Show yourself," I demanded, desperation creeping into my voice. In response, a low growl reverberated through the room, vibrating in my bones. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, a primal noise that hinted at something ancient and powerful lurking just beyond my perception. I stumbled backward, heart racing as I fled from the room and dashed down the hallway toward the next door. This time I didn't bother to knock, I flung it open wide and stepped inside. The second bedroom was eerily similar, the air heavy with dread and shadows pooling in corners like dark water. As I scanned the room, something caught my attention, a mirror hanging on the wall. It was old and ornate, its surface clouded with age. As I approached it cautiously, I felt an inexplicable pull, a compulsion to look deeper into its depths. When I peered into the glass, my breath hitched in my throat. Instead of my reflection staring back at me, I saw a swirling mass of darkness, figures writhing within it, as if trapped in an eternal struggle. Their faces were contorted in agony, mouths opened wide in silent screams that echoed in my mind. "Help us," they seemed to plead, their voices merging into a cacophony of despair. "No," I shouted, stepping back from the mirror as panic surged within me. "I can't help you." The moment I turned away from it, however, something shifted in the air, a palpable sense of anger radiating from all around me. The temperature dropped sharply, breath turned visible as frost crept across surfaces like creeping vines. Suddenly, a deafening crash echoed from downstairs, a sound that reverberated through my very bones. It was followed by an unnatural silence that settled heavily in its wake. My instincts screamed at me to run to escape this nightmare, but something deeper held me rooted to the spot. I had invited this darkness into my life, now it was time to confront it. Gathering every ounce of courage I possessed, I made my way back down the stairs. Each step felt like walking through molasses, dread clung to me like a shroud. As I reached the bottom landing, I saw that all lights had flickered out, leaving only shadows dancing in chaotic patterns against walls. Enough, I shouted into the darkness, voice echoing off empty surfaces. "I know you're here. Show yourself." The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity, until finally, slowly, the shadows began to coalesce before me. They twisted and writhed as if forming into something tangible, something horrifyingly familiar. In an instant, a figure emerged from within them, a tall silhouette cloaked in darkness with eyes that glowed like embers against its shadowy form. It stood before me, silent yet imposing, its presence suffocating, as if it drew all warmth from the air around us. "Why have you come?" it whispered, a voice like gravel scraping against stone, each word resonating deep within my chest. I want to know what you are," I stammered, fear threatening to consume me whole. "What do you want from me?" The figure tilted its head slightly, its glowing eyes bore into mine with an intensity that made me feel exposed, laid bare before this entity that had haunted my every waking moment since bringing home the talisman. "We are bound by your desire," it replied cryptically. "You sought power. Now you must pay." A wave of realization crashed over me. This was not just a haunting, it was a reckoning for my choices, a manifestation of everything dark within myself that had drawn this entity forth. "What do you mean?" I asked desperately. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." The figure stepped closer, its form shifting as if made of smoke, each movement sending chills down my spine. "You sought knowledge beyond your understanding," it hissed softly. "Now you must face what lies beneath." Before I could respond or even comprehend its words fully, everything erupted into chaos. The walls trembled violently, as if shaking off centuries' worth of dust and despair. Objects flew off shelves, furniture toppled over, as though caught in a violent storm unleashed by unseen forces. I stumbled backward against a wall just as everything around me spiraled out of control, the world blurring into chaos until all sound faded away, except for one chilling phrase echoing through my mind: "Release us." In that moment of sheer terror and confusion, clarity struck like lightning. I understood what needed to be done. If these souls were trapped by their own darkness as well as mine, I had to find a way to set them free. "Please," I cried out amidst the chaos. "I want to help. How can I release you?" The entity paused for a heartbeat before responding, its voice now softer yet filled with an urgency that resonated deep within me. "You must confront your own darkness. Only then can we be freed." As those words hung heavy in the air around us, the chaos began to subside, the shadows receding slightly, as if waiting for something more profound than mere words could provide. Taking a deep breath amid lingering fear, I closed my eyes and focused inwardly, reflecting upon every choice that had led me here, the moments of weakness where temptation had overshadowed reason, the desires that had drawn me toward this cursed artifact. With each memory surfacing, I felt weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of release washing over me like cleansing rain, as though acknowledging these truths allowed light back into spaces long shrouded by darkness. When I opened my eyes again, the figure remained before me, but now there was an air of anticipation surrounding it, as if waiting for what would come next. This segment heightens tension through confrontation with supernatural elements while exploring themes of personal accountability and redemption. You can continue building on this narrative for your final segment. As I stood before the shadowy figure, a profound realization washed over me. I had spent too long running from my fears, from the darkness that lurked within. Now it was time to confront it head-on, I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the moment, and spoke with newfound determination. "I acknowledge my mistakes," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling around us. "I sought power without understanding its cost. I've let my curiosity lead me astray." The figure regarded me silently, its glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. The air crackled with tension, as if the very fabric of reality was waiting for my next words. "I want to make amends," I continued, feeling a surge of energy coursing through me. "I want to help you find peace. Please, guide me." For a moment, nothing happened. The shadows hung heavy in the air, and I feared that perhaps it was too late, that I had waited too long to take responsibility for my actions. But then, slowly, the figure began to shift. The shadows coalesced around it, forming swirling patterns that danced like smoke in a gentle breeze. "Face your truth," it whispered, its voice echoing softly in my mind. "Only by embracing your darkness can you free us all." With those words resonating in my heart, I closed my eyes once more. I envisioned every regret, every fear that had haunted me, my desire for knowledge that had led to this moment. Each memory surfaced like a wave crashing against the shore, raw and unfiltered. I recalled moments of envy toward friends who seemed to have everything figured out while I floundered in uncertainty. Times when I chose ambition over connection, pushing people away in pursuit of goals that felt hollow once achieved. The guilt of seeking out forbidden knowledge without considering the consequences weighed heavily on me. As these thoughts spiraled through my mind, I felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow for those who had suffered because of my choices, those who had been drawn into this darkness alongside me. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the void, tears streaming down my face as remorse washed over me like a cleansing tide. "I'm so sorry for everything." In that moment of vulnerability, something shifted within the room. The oppressive atmosphere lightened, as if responding to my sincerity. The shadows began to recede further, their forms softening as warmth filled the space around us. "Release us," came the chorus of voices again, this time softer, more harmonious, like a gentle breeze rustling through leaves. With renewed purpose, I opened my eyes and focused on the talisman still hanging around my neck, the source of this chaos and pain. It pulsed gently against my skin, as if alive with energy, a reminder of both my past mistakes and potential redemption. I reached up and grasped it firmly in my hand, feeling its weight settle against my palm, a tangible representation of everything I had learned. "I release you," I declared boldly, channeling every ounce of strength into those words. "I release you from your bond to me." As soon as I spoke those words aloud, a brilliant light erupted from the talisman, a blinding radiance that filled the room and pushed back the shadows like dawn breaking over a dark horizon. The figure before me shimmered in response, its form shifting and swirling as if caught in a powerful wind. "Thank you," it breathed softly, its voice now filled with gratitude rather than malice, as it began to dissolve into particles of light that floated upward toward the ceiling. The other shadows followed suit, each one breaking free from their earthly bonds as they transformed into ethereal wisps of light that danced joyfully around me. A sense of peace enveloped me, warmth flooded through every corner of my being, as if love itself had returned home after a long absence. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming connection to these souls, an understanding that transcended fear or regret. They were free now, liberated from their suffering, and so was I. As the last remnants of darkness faded away into shimmering motes of light, silence settled over the room once more, a profound stillness that felt sacred after all that had transpired. With trembling hands, I placed the talisman back on the table where it belonged, a symbol, not just of what had been, but also what could be moving forward, a reminder never to take curiosity lightly or seek power without understanding its implications. The following days were marked by an unexpected sense of clarity, a newfound appreciation for life's simple pleasures and connections with others. Friends reached out more frequently, laughter filled my home once again as we shared stories over coffee or gathered for movie nights filled with horror films instead of real-life terror. But even amidst this return to normalcy, echoes lingered within me, a reminder of what lay beneath our everyday existence, shadows waiting patiently for acknowledgement rather than fear, truths yearning for acceptance rather than denial. And while whispers from those lost souls would no longer haunt my dreams, they remained etched into my heart forever, a testament to resilience found through vulnerability, a reminder that true strength lies not in power but in connection with ourselves and each other. As time passed, I learned to embrace curiosity differently, not as an insatiable thirst for knowledge, but rather as an invitation to explore life's mysteries, while honoring boundaries set by wisdom gained through experience. The talisman remained in its place on display, a beautiful artifact now stripped of its curse yet rich with history, a conversation starter rather than a source of dread, and whenever friends visited they would marvel at its intricate design while unaware of its dark past. But deep down inside I knew better. I understood now how easily one could be drawn into darkness, and how vital it was to seek light instead, to embrace love over fear, to cherish connections forged through honesty rather than ambition alone. And so life continued, each day unfolding like pages in a book, yet unwritten, a journey filled with possibility, where shadows danced alongside light, a delicate balance between curiosity and caution, a dance between knowing when to seek answers and when simply to let go. This final segment wraps up your story by providing resolution and reflection on personal growth after confronting darkness, while emphasizing themes of redemption and connection. Feel free to adjust any part according to your vision.